Hello and welcome to News Review. The new governor, Sir James Dutton, has conveyed the best wishes of Her Majesty the Queen and her support for the people of Gibraltar. Speaking at his ceremonial swearing-in following his arrival aboard HMS Bulwark on Friday morning, Sir James said that in the current political dispute with Spain, Gibraltar and the UK held the moral high ground and were 100% sure of their position. Meanwhile, in his welcome speech in Parliament, the Chief Minister described the current political scenario as Groundhog Day because of the similar situation facing Peter Caruana in his first term of office. Mr. Picardo said we should not kid ourselves into thinking that anyone is to blame other than the Pepe government. And the opposition leader, Daniel Feetham, told Sir James that relations with Spain have never been so poor since the closure of the border by General Franco. Mr. Feetham reiterated his view that the Gibraltar government had every right to drop concrete blocks in British waters, but the whole community was now suffering the consequences. Also this week, Fabian Picardo said the Gibraltar economy remains on track to grow to £1.65 billion by the time of the next general election. The Chief Minister was speaking at a dinner organised by the Chamber of Commerce, who had asked Mr. Picardo if he'd deliver a mid-term State of the Nation speech to its members.
An audience of leading local businessmen and women gathered last night to hear the Chief Minister speak about business and politics.
Businesses in Gibraltar are benefiting from the frontier queues, but some are being hit very hard. Less visitors coming to Gibraltar, and that is especially challenging shops that sell luxury goods. So it is a challenge for some businesses and one that we are trying to address with government.
In his 40-minute speech, Fabian Picardo gave a buoyant assessment of Gibraltar's economic performance, while talking through some of the challenges it faces. He spoke of the past, the present and the future, specifically the next 2 years. Looking back, Mr. Picardo reflected upon the similarities between Gibraltar in the late 90s and the situation today.
The European Commission considered taking legal action against Spain, but just asked that the checks should become proportionate. Surprise, surprise. Well, their statement 10, 15 years ago and their statements now are enough to turn a nation of Europhiles into Eurosceptics overnight.
He argued there are two main differences between then and now. Firstly, there's now no threat of joint sovereignty or a bilateral process between Spain and the UK. And secondly, unlike the current leader of the opposition, in the late 90s, Joe Bossano backed the then Chief Minister, Peter Caruana.
His message was, before they get to him, Peter Caruana, they have to come through me. Let's not allow ourselves to believe that anything is happening in our foreign relations other than the difficulties that we have when a Partido Popular, the government, is in place in Madrid or even closer to us in La Línea.
Our policy is dialogue, 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 but not a dialogue of the death and certainly not a dialogue at any price.
Looking relaxed, Mr. Picardo was happy to say he's been in direct contact with the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, in the past 2 weeks, discussing the UK's proposed point of consumption tax, which could adversely impact on Gibraltar-based gaming companies.
I've engaged the Chancellor, Mr. Osborne, directly on the subject. We are now looking at the detail of this, of what it is that Gibraltar would like to see change. It's not that we're saying that there should be no aspect of UK revenue. It's the structure of the way that the bills and the regulations under the bill in particular are going to be set up that might affect the licensing regime. And I think the GBGA will find that that is something that the UK Exchequer is now ready to listen to.
And in case anyone thought Gibraltar's top politician had forgotten there's an election due in 2 years' time,
we've delivered in 2 years probably the fastest growing economy in southern Europe. We've grown in GDP from 1.1 billion to 1.26 billion, well on target to achieve 1.65 billion by the next general election. I can confidently tell you that when we get to the next election campaign, I will hold up that document and I will say to you, vision accomplished. Thank you very much.
to an extent, we would expect to hear that from him. He's a politician, and he firmly believes in the economic policies that he's adopting. So far, we have had growth, so we hope that he's right.
Quietly optimistic.
Quietly optimistic.
The Chamber is an influential organisation accounting for approximately half of private sector employees on the Rock. In the coming months, it'll be keeping a close eye on the government's progress on its promises to deliver on key business initiatives.
The UK Prime Minister David Cameron said he raised the diplomatic bag incident with his Spanish counterpart Mariano Rajoy last Friday. The two leaders met at the EU Eastern Partnership Summit in Lithuania. Mr Cameron has told the UK Parliament he made clear the UK's deep concern about the incident in which British government bags containing official correspondence were opened by Spanish officials while in transit. The Prime Minister was answering a written question to the UK Parliament by Labour MP Tom Blenkinsop, who asked what recent discussions Mr Cameron had had with the Spanish Premier regarding the Gibraltar border. Mr Rajoy has been quoted in the Spanish media as saying the incident has now been resolved. The Minister for Europe has told the House of Commons that it is up to Spain to behave as a true NATO ally and European Union partner and cease its campaign against Gibraltar. In answer to questions from Barry Shearman, a Labour cooperative MP who urged the government to temper the rhetoric language used against Spain, Mr Lidington said he would like nothing more than for the language to be tempered, but said Spain must desist from illegal incursions into Gibraltar, which have become all too common.
Mr Speaker, can I urge the Minister to use all his influence to temper the language that's being used in this dispute? There is a dispute. Spain are great allies of ours. They're fellow members of the European Union. Many British people live in Spain. Can we just lower the temperature and stop your sort of throwing brickbats at each other?
Mr Speaker, I would be only too pleased if we could lower the temperature, but I have to say to the honourable gentleman, it is not just a matter of lowering the temperature so far as verbal exchanges are concerned. It is a matter of expecting our NATO allies in Spain to desist from the sort of unlawful incursions into British Gibraltar waters that have been all too common.
The GSD has streamlined its party executive ahead of a vote in January which will introduce new blood into the party's ranks. Although the party has made no official announcement, GBC understands that 8 members from the current executive have been re-elected from the previous pool of 25, and another 8 will be chosen at an AGM next month. Together with the elected members of the GSD, this will bring the executive back up to 23. The party last month published its new constitution and is following this up with further steps to rejuvenate its ranks. GBC understands 4 of the executives re-elected are Freddie Vasquez, Nigel Feetham, Elliot Phillips and Marlene Naon, who stood as a candidate in last July's by-election. Now, around 150 attended a demonstration in London last weekend organised by the defenders of Gibraltar, which aimed to highlight the continuing harassment by Spain at the frontier and its actions in British Gibraltar territorial waters. Members of the Defenders of Gibraltar, Gibraltarians living in the UK and Friends of the Rock in London showed up at around 11 a.m. on Saturday morning to begin their peaceful protest outside the Spanish Embassy in London. The demonstration was also supported by William Dartmouth, UKIP's MEP for Gibraltar.
I came along here because I have the honour to represent Gibraltar in the European Parliament, and I came along here in order to demonstrate alongside the Defenders of Gibraltar.
With both Union Jack and Gibraltar flags, bunting and signs, this demonstration was certainly eye-catching to passers-by, either on foot or in their cars. At times, the odd vehicle honking their horns in support. The message from the Defenders of Gibraltar was clear.
Well, the main purpose or the main aim for today's protest was to highlight how Spain bullies and oppresses Gibraltar, so essentially for all the tourists and all the people that pass by, but also to hand in a dossier of evidence and a personal letter to the Spanish ambassador as well, which will be sent to the press in Gibraltar. A copy of that letter will also be sent to Cameron, which is what we're going to be doing. But so far, you know, it's been a great success. We actually got to meet the ambassador this morning before the protest started. Had a quiet word with some of the committee members, and it's been fun to have all the Gibraltarians together. You know, we're quite united, and I think the strength of feeling was evident, and I think he got the message this morning.
The group then led those present to the embassy's entrance and delivered a letter addressed to the Spanish ambassador in London, Federico Trillo, at the Spanish embassy. Anne-Marie Struggles and William Dartmouth delivered the letter to the chief security officer at the embassy. They then made their way to Whitehall and delivered a letter to number 10 Downing Street addressed to the Prime Minister. The defenders of Gibraltar have vowed to promote the ROC's case internationally and take it to the heart of decision-making institutions. They say this is just the start of the campaign. The protest on Saturday ended with a walk to the Gibraltar House at the Strand for a photo opportunity. The government has said it intends to promote sexual health in the community much more vigorously than in the past. As part of this initiative, the GHA will routinely publish statistics of sexually transmitted diseases. Stephen Nish asked Health Minister John Cortes how soon this would happen.
Some of these statistics are already available in the annual reports, but others, like HIV, for example, have not been made available. But we will hope to be doing this soon. We have to compile it using the records that we have available. So hopefully this is going to happen quite soon.
And is it really necessary to do this? Because from the statistics that you've published, there's been 27 cases of HIV in Gibraltar in the past 10 years, which of course works out to fewer than 3 a year.
Well, and I must say that those 27 are not necessarily still active here. They include results, but they can be from transients, people who are not resident in Gibraltar, which will show up in the statistics. So we cannot be absolutely sure as to what number there is. But I think it's important that we should be open with this sort of thing. Sexual health is something that has been largely taboo in the past, and there's nothing to be taboo about. We want to be open. We want people to be aware that all kinds of diseases and illnesses exist in the community, and if we're aware of the type of illnesses that exist, then we are able to prevent them and to take steps. So it's basically lifting any veil of secrecy that there may have been, because we have to be open about our health.
And are you thinking of extending the information that you provide in relation to other illnesses and diseases, perhaps?
We have quite a number of statistics which are made available in the annual reports, and these are available online. Clearly, through the years, the GHA has not been able to have as many statistics as I would have liked to have had, because either these haven't been kept or we haven't had the electronic means of doing so. Increasingly, as we progress the electronic health record, which we are determined to do within the next 2 years, more statistics will be available, easily prepared and made available to the public. I think that as much of information as possible that we can give is always good.
But of course, whatever information you give will be anonymous in respect of the actual names of the patients involved.
That goes without saying. This is completely anonymized. Nobody will have any possibility at all of identifying who we're talking about. That would not be acceptable. But the other thing we want to do, obviously, is increase awareness. We're going to be preparing leaflets and initiatives and so on, so that people are aware. The more, as I say, the more people are aware of the diseases and illnesses in the community, the more we can do to prevent them.
And we'll be back with more of this week's news after this break.